Welcome back to Pragmatic Electric and to part 2 of my Model S review from the perspective of a long-time Model 3 Standard Range Plus owner. In part 1 we looked at the Model S 100D inside and out, and we also looked at how I got my hands on one for a week and just how expensive it is compared to my Model 3. Now I'll dive into more of the stats and figures about the car comparatively. I'll also look at what it's really like to drive, and ultimately I'll also answer the question, would I actually buy one? Let's get back to it. So other facts about this car, it has a rated range of about 485 Ks. My Model 3 has a rated range of about 400 because it's one of those unicorn ones that's got a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack but the higher efficiency motor. But anyway, the point is that that particular difference, that's 85 kilometers of rated range more, which is you would hope for. And yeah, you can get a long-range Model 3, and that would be similar, but I don't have a long-range Model 3. Another interesting one about this one is the AC charging rate of this particular car is it does 16.5 kilowatts as opposed to the 11 kilowatts on my Model 3. It all balances out because ultimately you've got 60 kilowatt hours you're trying to charge at 11 kilowatts versus a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack you're trying to charge at 16.5 kilowatts on AC. So ultimately, it doesn't really make too much of a difference to your charging time overnight. It's still about somewhere between 5 to 7 hours from completely flat to completely full. However, this one is not the LFP battery. Opinions vary on LFPs, whether you should charge them to 100% regularly or not. I'm not going to get into that discussion right now. That's another discussion for another video. But basically, this one you can't. If you do that, you will dramatically shorten the life of the battery because it's an NCP battery, and that is unfortunately different battery chemistry, different charging requirements. So you charge to 80% roughly, maybe 90 on a daily basis. Only do 100% when you're doing a trip, which is fine. So another one I didn't realize was the DC charging rate on this car is also different, which I didn't realize until I plugged it in at a supercharger. So this model can only charge at a maximum rate on DC of 145 kilowatts. I mean, that's still plenty, don't get me wrong, but my Model 3 can charge at 170 maximum. Of course, that's at low rates of charge, and you've got to be at a supercharger that's got dedicated stalls, or if you're at a shared stall, you're the only one in the shared stall, and it's not getting split between two cars, depending on if it's a V2 or V3 or a V4, and so on and so forth. And frankly, when I took this car on the road for a bit of a road trip on the weekend, honestly, it didn't make too much of a difference. So ultimately, though, it is a difference, and the Model 3 is still faster in that regard. Another interesting difference is that this car is big. It is noticeably larger than my Model 3. So it's about 276 millimeters longer and 188 millimeters wider. It's kind of crazy. It barely fits in my garage, but it does fit. Unlike a Cybertruck, which I measured up the dimensions of, can't get a Cybertruck in Australia yet. Maybe ever, we'll see. But that, for example, if I were to park a Cybertruck in my garage at home, I would be down for essentially, I'd be unable to open and close the door to get in and out of the house because it would block the door. One of the other things about this car is it is very heavy. This thing weighs 2.3 tons. That's 610 kilograms more than my Model 3. But it's not just the weight, it's also the drag coefficient. And because it's AC induction motors, it's also less efficient than a DC fixed permanent magnet. So because of this, the energy efficiency of this car is rated at about 196 watt hours per kilometer. Under the same conditions, my Model 3 is rated 146 watt hours per kilometer. So it is far more efficient. My Model 3 is far more efficient than this. So let's talk about some of the likes and dislikes. So one of the things I absolutely love about this car is the binnacle. I've missed having a binnacle. I have missed it so much. I mean, you do get used to the screen off to the left and the speedos giving you the readout and so on, but it is so much more natural to look straight in front of you where you should be looking and see your speed just below you. I love the speed limit, speed indicator. I love all of that, and I love the temperature, the charge level, what gear I'm in, I suppose, if that makes much sense. I'm in drive. The time of day. The rest of it, though, I could give a pass on. Like, I don't really care too much about the energy consumption. I don't care too much about the map. I've got the bigger map here honestly, that's not that big a deal. And the visualization in the center of the car and other cars around you, again, neither here nor there. It could be on the big screen, be on the middle. I don't really care about that. But just having that binnacle there for my speed readout is just magic, and I miss it, and I love that so much. Another thing I love about this car, it has stalks that actually do work like stalks. So they're not temporary action. So if I, for example, want to change lanes, I can indicate, and the indicator stalk stays exactly where it is until I turn it off, like every other car that I've ever driven. I love that. It's simple, but I like it, you know? Whereas on the Model 3, all you've got is temporary movement. And it's like you flick it down and it's spring-loaded and it lets go. And I regularly flick up and down to indicate left and right in my own car, and what I get is essentially it doesn't recognize that I'm indicating. This thing has never got it wrong. So, such a simple thing, right? Other thing that's difficult to see down here is that there's another stalk for autopilot: engage, disengage, increase, decrease speed, and of course this funky dial for changing your following distance between other vehicles. So I love that it's on its own stalk. I could live without it, but it's nice. It's one less thing away from these, which, unlike the Model 3, they go up and down and you can push. They don't have any side-to-side functionality. Another thing I love is the glove box. It's got a button. Look at it. Hey, a button. Who would have thought? Again, such a simple thing. But I like that. That's nice. Another thing I love that you can't see is I get a lot less of the nagging issues that I get with the Model 3. Things like the lane positioning as well. I'm not sure if it's camera related or if it is like, I'm not sure exactly why, but this car hardly gives me any of those lane departure alert warnings that the Model 3 just seems to give me incessantly, and for no good reason. So I do enjoy the fact that this car yells at me a heck of a lot less. Thank you, that's great, I like it. And when it parks, the parking sensors and the auto park works really, really well. Not that I have auto park on my Model 3, I wouldn't pay for it, but because of the ultrasonics on it, it is actually quite good. It's better than the Tesla Vision, there's no question at all. Here's a funny little thing. I love the air vents for the air conditioning because I can adjust them with my hands. Look at that. How good is that? It's incredible, right? Such a simple thing. Why can't they just do that? That works, and I like it. Anyway, whatever, it's fine. You don't always get what you want. The last key difference between this model and my Model 3, and of course the third gen, the Plaid, is this massive 17-inch portrait screen. Now, I didn't realize just how big this was until I was driving this for a significant period of time. This thing is huge, and it's unnecessarily huge, and there's so much space on here that is really difficult to use, because from a glanceability point of view, my field of view starts to drop off about this level here. So what's it like to drive? If I were to put it in a single word, I'd say it's a bit clunky. It's not that it's bad, but it is a 7-year-old car. You have to give it some kind of pass for the fact that it is 7 years old, not 3 years old. But it just feels less precise than my Model 3. The Model 3, of course, has an unfair advantage. As a vehicle, it has essentially had all of the lessons that could be learned from the Model 3 and the Model X at that point rolled into it. It has less parts, it's easier to manufacture, and honestly, it's simply a better, more refined car. Now, this is obviously not a 2021 Model S Plaid, and the difference, obviously, I can't tell. I haven't driven one of those, but if right now today you were to ask me, would you pick up one of these second-hand? A second-hand one of these will go for about the same price as a brand new Model 3 Standard Range Plus right now. So I guess the question is, would I do that? No, I wouldn't. As much as I love certain things about this car, I prefer personally my Model 3. Maybe there's an element of I've driven that for 3 years and it's just what I'm used to. I can't deny that there is a bit of bias there. And it is fun to drive this car, but it is big, it's heavy, it's clunky, and whilst I do like it, I don't love it. It's a wonderful car, but it's just not for me. So that's it. Hopefully this has been interesting, and honestly, I've got to say I'm looking forward to getting my Model 3 Standard Range Plus back again. So I'll get it back shortly, and I'll be returning this Model S to Tesla for the next person to use as their loan car. It's been fun, but sorry, unfortunately, just not for me. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time. Bye.